You run presentation in meetings tells everyone how fast you will become an executive. Most people think that the fix is better slides or getting your script tight or even doing more rehearsals. Sorry to burst your bubble, but the only real way to win meetings is to get the executive to the decision as fast as possible. Nothing more than that. Now, there are proven ways to help executives reach a decision in the most predictable manner. And this is what helps in skyrocketing your career. Personally, I have won hundreds of presentations with senior leadership in my career. I have the first-hand knowledge and have learned those proven methods. In this video, I want to explain the 4 key strategies of presenting which will help you win each and every meeting. The first strategy is to understand that the presentation is not a one-sided conversation where you are speaking and the rest of the audience is just listening to you, but a deep dialogue happening which you don't even realize. I'm sure you would have presented in a few meetings in your career. Now, let's think deeply, what are you trying to achieve in those meetings? You're presenting a topic and you want to build alignment on that topic with the executive. This alignment could mean like getting a decision for your business, sharing the progress with him, or brainstorming the next strategic steps. Now, for this meeting, you would have, of course, done the preparation. You would have prepared for the actual presentation slide, the supporting files, the script of what you're going to say in each and every slide. Now, 90% of your time gets spent in preparing for that meeting. You spend so much time and energy preparing the material that you make the first mistake in thinking that the goal was to get the presentation ready rather than focusing on how to build the alignment with the executive. This wrong focus a lot of time makes you present and forget that it's a conversation end of the day, a dialogue and not a presentation. How does one prepare for this dialogue? This will require understanding where the executive is even dialoguing through, or where are these questions of the executive even coming from. Now, any dialogue is just a pattern matching exercise which the executive is doing. This pattern matching is actually all the experience they have gained throughout their years. It could be various things like last year, marketing had planned 20 experiments with the executive, of which 19 have failed. Another thing could be engineering data center, like it was planned for 3 months, but in reality it took 12 months. There was a data leak which caused thousands of customer data to go for a toss. It could be anything, but a lot of experience has gone into the last 1 year. With such a huge depth of experience, it is very easy for the executive to pattern match through your work. Why have you used this approach instead of the other approach? What if this part of the things fail? How does this part compare to our previous attempt on the same problem? The executive is trying to do a massive de-risk of your proposal to get it shaped up for winning. So you have to give a deep thought for each item with respect to the dialogue you're going to have. Now, I've done a complete video on the lens through which the executive is looking at your presentation. I call it the executive formula. You can check it out here. This is the business math an executive is doing, a back of the envelope calculation if you may, for literally everything they're looking at. It's very easy to build for your day-to-day work as well, and you can watch this video to learn how to build it. Now, this is the first strategy to master. How do you become dialogue ready instead of just presentation ready? Now, being dialogue ready gets you in the right mindset, but the next strategic mistake is the reason you might have the answers to all executive problems, but still you would come out as not executive ready. Now, you've been asked by the executive to solve a business problem. You have spent like good 100 hours and more than 3 weeks to get to the answer. And I'm just thinking out loud. In those time spent, you found the answer. So congratulations. You're now one step away from your next promotion. Now you start building the presentation, asking yourself, what should I add in this presentation? And here is where the biggest misunderstanding happens. You start putting all the research and effort you have put into your work in the presentation. Now you start building the presentation, asking yourself, what should I even add in this presentation? And here is where the biggest misunderstanding happens. You start putting all the research and effort you have put in your work into the presentation. Now, the effort you put, it is something no one really cares about at the executive level. An executive's mind is running to get to that insight that solves the business problem. So for him, the insight is more valuable than the presentation. And let me give you another example for this. You're working for a global flower supplier, let's say Flowers and Sun. Now, the executive has asked you this question: how do we grow our Africa market? And you immediately start answering because you've been part of Africa division for the past 3 years. Now, you talk about the 15K branches which drove this year's revenue. Africa is becoming the global hub for flower export. You bring in all the data you know. Now, your points sound super because of your knowledge, but relative to the ask, they will always come out to be a weaker points. This relative weakness between the ask and your knowledge is what I call the information gain. The information gain is the gain in knowledge with respect to the ask in a given time period. I don't want to get all scientific. If there's a slowness in information gain, the pacing of the presentation would completely look off. Like, we imagine like the executive is driving at the speed of 100 miles an hour, and your presentation, due to its pacing, will feel like 30 miles an hour. This subtle problem is clearly visible on the executive's face when he's completely blank and waiting for you to reach where he has already reached. You not even realize that you've just now signaled that you're not ready for the next level. And mind you, you actually have solved the problem and there's no issue with the solution you presented. So always have a pulse of the information gain and the pacing of your presentation and never make this mistake again. Getting the pacing right is the overall mantra, right? Actually, not yet. The next strategic mistake can still completely derail your presentation, even if you have spent hundreds of hours solving the problem. Now, let's say you are an operations manager. The executive has asked you to find a way to save the fair housing cost. It's a cost optimization problem. You start spending time with the problem and you actually find the answer in the few weeks ahead. And you got 1 million savings. You bring this entire analysis to paper and you're ready for the presentation. Cut to you are in the room with the executive. Seeing your genius $1 million savings idea, the executive immediately says, my total warehouse cost is $100 million a year. And you have helped me save 1% of that. But I can easily shut down the Scranton warehouse to save $5 million. This is all happening thinking out loud. Now, even if the executive's idea, which just came out of thin air, might be utter bullshit, he just proved that you have completely miscalibrated the problem and wasted everyone's time. Now, here's the idea. Every ask from the executive has to be placed in your organization's context. I call it relevancy maxing. It's your deeper understanding of placing your ideas inside the context of the organization. Without maximizing this relevancy, you will spend so much time solving problems which are not even supposed to be solved in the first place. Mind you, this I see propping up in so many presentations, and a lot of folks misunderstand this as a presentation problem, which is actually a relevancy problem in the first place. Now, strongly understand the organization context and place your problem which you have solved inside that context. And getting relevancy right gets your presentation actually ready. But the next strategic mistake can completely take away executives' confidence in your presentation. Now, every problem given to you by the executive gives you a fresh challenge to play with. The misunderstanding occurs when you think you are the first person who's taking a stab at this problem. Every company, end of the day, is a going concern. Core problems of the business always remain the same. Someone in your company in the past would have solved the problem itself. It could just be that the business has grown 10 times since the last time the problem was solved, or the department has completely re-engineered, or the org structure has changed. It could be anything. Knowing that you are not the first one to solve the problem means that you can go back to these folks who have already solved it before. Those folks have seen the wrong rabbit holes which are not supposed to be entered in the first place. They know the exact framing of the problem which actually worked with the executive. And of course, they have the actual experience of solving the problem. I call these folks de-risking partners. These are the heroes you go back to be your thinking partner. And apart from the benefits which I mentioned, there's even a bigger reason to be talking to these partners. And if your work has been rubber stamped from these partners, the executive will immediately 10x the trust in your work. So this is the final kicker required to win the presentation. Always go back to your de-risking partners and make sure that your presentation is partner ready. Just to recap what we have learned. First thing, always be dialogue ready instead of just building a presentation. Know how to pace your presentation with the executive, and always have the organization context baked into your actual work. And the final thing is do work with your de-risking partners. Oh gosh, I have spent a good 10 years learning these strategies firsthand, and I know how employees struggle solving these problems. And I work with employees just like you who want to become executives really fast. If you want to work with me and cut short your executive journey, then you can book some time with me. I've mentioned my calendar link in the description below. I run money back guarantees on these calls as I'm completely sure on the value you will get out of it. Awesome. Now, presentation do have strategic mistakes, but there are few tactical mistakes which also kill the presentation. I've actually created a separate video on the 4 key mistakes people make in their presentation. You can watch it from the link given here. And thank you guys for watching.